All right, let's dive into a medical case that is just fascinating. It starts with one of the most common illnesses you can imagine, but it ends up somewhere, well, somewhere no one could have predicted. It's really a story about persistence, about technology, and about the true art of being a medical detective. So think about it. We've all had the flu, right? You feel absolutely awful for a few days, maybe a week, and then you start to get better. But what if you didn't? What if that recovery just never came? What would happen if the fever just stayed? Okay, so this all starts with a guy named John Heening Schumann. He's a busy law student, probably stressed, burning the midnight oil, and he comes down with what everyone, including him, thinks is just a completely ordinary bug. And at first, all the symptoms were totally textbook. He had a fever, a cough, that classic, just deep in your bones kind of tired. The doctors gave him the advice we've all heard a million times. Go home, get some rest, drink lots of fluids. It looked for all the world like a routine flu that would just have to run its course. But here's where things start to get weird. See, a normal flu, you're usually feeling better in about a week. But for John, 3 weeks in, he still has a fever. By week 5, he's not getting better at all. He's actually getting worse. And by the time 2 whole months have passed, nobody has a single clue what's going on. So this is that moment where a simple case just completely transforms into this frustrating, complex puzzle. The obvious answer, the flu, was clearly not the right one. And that meant the real hunt had to begin. And John's symptoms were seriously ramping up. We're talking a high fever that just wouldn't break, unexplained weight loss, and these awful night sweats. And the fatigue, it was becoming debilitating. For the doctors, these were huge red flags. Alarm bells were going off. They knew they had to start looking for something much, much rarer. So the medical team did what you do in a situation like this. They cast a massive net. They started testing for literally everything they could think of. Could it be something like Lyme disease? Some rare tropical bug he picked up somewhere? They checked for hepatitis, for HIV, drawing vial after vial of blood to search for any possible answer. And after all of that searching, all of those tests, every single one came back negative. Can you just imagine how frustrating that must have been? John is clearly visibly sick, but according to every test they run, he's perfectly fine. They had hit a total dead end. Okay, so if the clues aren't in his blood, where do you look next? The investigation had to go deeper. The thought was, if we can't find the problem in the tests, maybe we can see it. It was time to use some advanced imaging technology to literally look inside his body. First up, they used a CT scan. You can think of this as a super-powered X-ray, It takes all these detailed pictures from every possible angle, like little slices, and a computer stitches them all together to build this incredible 3D map of everything inside. And they also used an MRI. Now, this one is a bit different. It uses powerful magnets, not radiation. And it gives you an even more detailed look at the body's soft tissues, things like your organs. And there it was. After weeks and weeks of finding nothing, a breakthrough. The scans revealed the very first real clue in this entire mystery. Tucked away near his liver, there was an abnormal mass, something that absolutely should not have been there. So how does this one single clue unravel the entire thing? Well, this discovery finally pointed the doctors to a diagnosis that, honestly, no one saw coming. So, what was it? The mass was something called a hemangioma. Now, that's basically a non-cancerous tumor that's just a big old tangle of blood vessels. But here's the kicker. For whatever reason, this one had become inflamed, and that inflammation triggered a massive body-wide immune response. His body was literally attacking the tumor, and that huge internal battle was what was causing all the flu symptoms. And this is such a crucial point to understand. The moment you hear the word tumor, your mind immediately jumps to cancer, right? But John's tumor was benign. It wasn't spreading, it wasn't cancerous. The real issue was the crazy amount of inflammation it was creating, which completely tricked his body into thinking it was fighting this constant, raging infection. And the wildest part is that once they finally knew what the real cause was, the solution was surprisingly simple. Surgeons went in and removed the hemangioma, and as soon as they did, poof. Every single symptom, the fever, the night sweats, that awful fatigue, it all just vanished. Completely. So what's the big picture here? What can a story like this teach us? Well, this case actually reveals something really fundamental about what medicine is truly all about. And it's this. At its very heart, medicine isn't just about science and memorizing facts from a textbook. It's about investigation. It's detective work. It's about gathering clues, following leads, and, this is a big one, being willing to admit that your first theory was totally wrong and you have to start over. And no good detective works alone. This case proves that medicine is a team sport. It only works because doctors share what they know. They rely on each other's experience, their shared curiosity, and a sense of community to solve the puzzles that no one person could ever crack by themselves. John's story really gives us the playbook for this kind of detective work. It teaches us that common symptoms don't always have a common cause. It shows you've got to be willing to question your assumptions. Persistence is everything. And maybe the most important lesson is that sometimes the most powerful thing a doctor can say is, "I don't know yet," because that little word "yet" is what keeps the search for the truth alive. And that kind of leaves us with one final thing to think about, doesn't it? Not just in medicine, but in pretty much any part of life. When is admitting you don't have the answer not a sign of failure, but actually the very first step toward finding the truth?